Hi guys, welcome to the channel. My name's Chris Wright. I'm a landscape photographer working out of Granada, Spain. Now, what I wanted to talk about today, if you remember at the end of last week's video, I said that I'd be making another video about Affinity Photo in 2 weeks. Well, I couldn't restrain my impatience, and I realised that there was one element of the develop module that I had entirely omitted. So I wanted to address that, and one thing led to another, and so we came up with this second video in a week about Affinity Photo. What I wanted to talk about today is overlays, layers and masks. Now, overlays exist in the develop module, and that's what we're going to look at right now. Let's get started. Okay, we're going to work with the same picture that we did last week, and what I want to demonstrate here in the develop module is a tool called overlays. What overlays are is something broadly analogous to local adjustments in Photolab or to masks in Adobe Lightroom. So this is fairly basic stuff at this point, but bear with me because this lays the foundation for everything else. So there are two types of overlay. If we reveal the overlay panel here, you can see we've got a default master overlay. This is in fact the picture, and we've got icons here which allow us to add a brush overlay and one that allows us to add a gradient overlay. There are also icons over on the left hand side here. So we've got overlay paint tool, overlay erase tool and gradient overlay tool. Now the quickest way and the most foolproof way of doing this is probably to use the panel over here. So I'm going to add a gradient overlay, and I'm going to do the obvious thing here, which is to bring this down, and we'll just switch to basic adjustments and we'll just bring this sky down. Now, I'm going to do this in very broad brush stroke ways so that you can see exactly what I'm doing, but you could equally easily adjust this slightly more finesse by adjusting the highlights as well. So I'm going to use, as I said, I'm going to make this very obvious so we can see what we're actually doing. Okay, so I've done that. I go back to my overlay, assuming I'm happy with that, and I'm going to apply a brush overlay. So what this does is it gives us effectively a new layer, a new area of operation, and we can adjust the size of our brush up here and the hardness of that brush. Now I'm going to make it edge aware, and I'm going to increase the hardness to 100. So we're going to go edge aware, and I'm just going to show the overlay initially. So let's just draw this in. And you can see it's picking up the edges quite nicely here. Okay, that'll probably do for the time being. Let's just say I make a mistake though and bring it out here. I can use the overlay erase tool just to tidy this up, and then go back to my brush and just fill that out. That's better. Okay, and then I can go back to my basic and go to exposure. I'll switch the overlay off so we can see what we're doing. Okay, and I can adjust the exposure here, and of course any of these other adjustments I can apply to it. So fairly clear with this. So this is quite neat. It's not perfect. It's nowhere near as powerful as control points and so on, as masks in Lightroom, not in the same league, but it does give us broad brushstroke ability to alter the balance of our picture before we go into the more refined photo persona. Okay, so that's overlays, and we can see that they're broadly analogous to control points, local adjustments in PhotoLab, and slightly overlapping with masks in Lightroom. Now, what they're hiding, or what is not so obvious behind the scenes, is that these adjustments are effectively baked into the layer. They're baked into the photograph. So you can undo them, but once you've committed that to a file, it's very difficult to go back and make any alterations. So they're very hard to really do any particularly refined work with these things and get really subtle blends and optimization done on them. That's all stuff for the photo persona. But what I want to talk about next is layers. And to go into this section of the video, imagine a layer as being a sheet of glass overlaid on top of your photograph. And on that sheet of glass, we can put a filter or something like a filter occupying a small area on the sheet of glass, so that the effect of that filter is applied to just one part of the photograph. And if you can imagine another sheet of glass above that, you might use that to apply a different filter to work with another different part of the photograph. And by building these layers up, we can apply multiple adjustments. We can have them overlap, we can have them blend into one another, make composites, and so on and so forth. The sky's the limit, really, because there are so many different adjustments and different tools that we can use in Affinity. So let's get into a basic explanation of what layers are, how they work in Affinity Photo. Okay, now the first thing to talk about in the photo persona is layers, and it's really important to understand what layers are and how they work. So, in order to make that point in the most graphical possible way, I'm going to do some perhaps rather surprising edits here. We've got to select the layer, and then if we take the paintbrush, and let's just choose a tool, and we can write something here. Now, the problem with this is that if we make a mistake, we can't do anything about it. So if we take the eraser, we're going to erase some of this layer, and let's just demonstrate that. There we go. So if I come over here, I've actually erased part of the picture, so there's no flexibility in this whatsoever. I can do my undo. That will repair the damage, but this seems to be a very long-winded way of doing things. Now, in order to maintain the integrity of my photograph and to be able to adjust things very easily, what I do is I create a layer. Okay, so I've added a pixel layer to the top of this, and making sure that I'm selected here, I can go back to my pen tool and I can write here. Now, the difference here, because this is on a layer, I can take my delete and I can delete it. Okay, so completely non-destructive. So this is the way that layers work, and of course I can build my layers up if I want to. I can have multiple layers, as many as I can cope with. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that the layers have an order. So we've got our base layer here, we've got our pixel layer here. Let's just draw back into it so we can demonstrate this more exactly. So here's my pixel layer. All right. And just to demonstrate perhaps more graphically how this works is, let's create another layer. So I'll put another pixel layer in here. And I'm going to draw on that one in a different colour. So let's take that back. Let's go yellow. Okay, and we can see that the yellow strokes are on top of the blue strokes. Now, if I were to change the position of the layers, my blue strokes come to the surface. Okay, so this is a very important principle to get into our minds here with layers, is that we start at the bottom, and as we put more and more layers in, these layers are transparent, so we can see right through to the bottom, except for any operation that we perform on the layer itself. So if we add text or whatever, that's how it works, and we can change again the position of these, and the yellow comes to the top. Okay, we can just to really make that point, we can put the picture on the top and you can't see anything because there's no element of that picture that's transparent. Okay, so that's how layers work. We've seen how the order of the layer is important. We've seen how a layer which is transparent, like the sheet of glass I referred to earlier, you can see straight through from the top of the screen, effectively from the top of the panel, all the way through to the base photograph, and you apply your adjustments, your effects, and so on individual layers. Okay, so let's have a look now at how we make an adjustment truly local. Now, there's no big mystery in this. There's a couple of different ways of doing it, but the first way we're going to look at is selecting an area using the selection tools and then applying an adjustment to that selection. Let's have a look at that. There's a couple of different ways of doing this that I want to show you. So one thing we can do is to create a selection. So I can use my selection brush and I can go in here. I've got my edges, okay, and I can just tweak and adjust this a little bit just to drive that selection up there, and I want this to follow the outline here. Pull this back in here. So I have my selection, and there are a few things that I can do working just with that selection. So if I choose my filters here, I can apply any of these filters. So let's have a look at shadows and highlights. We'll come here and you can see that I'm controlling what's happening within that selection. Okay, so that's all well and good. I can continue to adjust my selection, and I've got those adjustments in there. Okay, cancel out of there. Now, that's a direct way of doing it. There is a better way than that. So in Affinity Photo we have the concept of layers, and if you look at the icons underneath the panel on the right hand side, you'll see that you can add a new layer, you can add a pixel layer, and you can add adjustments. Now, what's important about adjustments is that they are in fact a type of layer themselves, and they contain a mask. Now, the default is that if you simply apply an adjustment, that the mask extends to the entire picture. But that need not be the case. So we're going to see in this next passage how we apply localized adjustments to discrete areas of the photograph. What adjustment layers do is allow us to get at any type of adjustment. So let's go with, again, we'll go with exposure, just or shadows, we'll go with exposure. Okay, and there's my exposure adjustment. What this does is affect across the entire photograph, but that's not what we want to do. What we want to do is to adjust this exposure over an area of the photograph. So this is no good, but adjustment layers have masks built in, and what we can do here is, if we invert the layer, what we've got here is a mask that hides everything that's going on in this layer. And what we can do, if we make this adjustment, see no effect at all on the underlying picture. What we can do though is we can paint in the adjustment. If I now take a white paintbrush, so white reveals, black conceals. In the mask, black is concealing what's going on in this layer. So I can take my paintbrush here, and the paintbrush will give me a preview of what's happening. So I need to bring this up a bit. Trigger that paintbrush, it's a little bit lighter. And I literally paint this back in to the area that I want it to be in. And I can take my, flip these over with a black brush. I can go over here and just tidy that up a little. Okay, and I can increase the view of the picture should I wish to. So let's get more detail here, just tidy this up. Anyway, you get the idea. I can okay, so we've put an exposure adjustment in and we've made a mask, and what's happening is with the exposure adjustment, it's affecting just that area there. What we might want to do is apply a whole series of adjustments and on the same picture. So this way of doing it is very effective, because what we're doing is we're limiting the adjustment mask to one small piece of the picture, and of course we're dropping straight through to pick up the original picture. So if I wanted to now come in here and let's do something slightly more interesting, we could come in here and do an HSL adjustment and just shift that hue so you can see how this is being applied in the picture, and of course it's across the entire picture. So if we take that up to here, we've now effectively got purple flashing on the building. Okay, and we might want to go with that, but we may want to okay, so we're now removing that red from the foreground, except of course for where it is already in the picture. With a bit of lateral thinking with these tools, you can really carry out some quite subtle alterations on your photograph, and the key to doing this is take you through the settings of the brushes. You've got an opacity which applies to the brush, which gives you effectively a see-through effect, so we can make the brush semi-transparent. Flow refers to the number of times, effectively the number of times that you have to go over the same area to get 100%. Effectiveness or harshness, hardness. So you'll notice that I was sort of brushing this repeatedly, and that was getting more and more of the colour to disappear in this case from these areas. You can see the mask here, and these are what I've drawn on the mask. And hardness is the hardness of the edge of the brush. We'll go with a black and white layer. Okay, so this turns the entire picture to black and white, except that we could invert it. And now what I might want to do is to just affect some of the key areas in the picture. And here you see I can just take those out to reveal my black and white layer. Okay. The last thing that I'm going to show you here is I want to just bring up this little area here. Okay, and I just want to make that a little bit more visible, and I can apply a adjustment to that. Okay, and there we go. Okay, so we've looked at overlays, selections, layers and masks. It's quite a lot of ground to cover conceptually if what you're used to is Photolab's local adjustments. But these tools are common across a whole raft of photography post-processing applications, and it's really worthwhile getting to grips with them. Now, just to recap, overlays are something that are broadly analogous to local adjustments in DxO Photolab. They're not nearly as well featured. However, they are restricted to the develop module, and they are intended for simple broad brush stroke adjustments to things like skies, areas of the landscape, and so on. They're not intended to do very detailed work. We've looked at the concept of layers, and we've looked at how you can use selections to target the effect of an adjustment onto a certain area of the picture. We've also looked at the way that adjustment layers contain their own masks, and how you can modify those masks in order, again, to target the adjustment on a particular area of the photograph. So that's really quite a lot of stuff to take on board. Now, what we haven't looked at in detail is probably the missing piece of the puzzle at this point, is how to do very refined selections, and that is a whole video of its own, and I'll endeavour to do that video next week. But the combination, I think, of masking layers, of the refined selections, and of the develop module will get us a very long way in Affinity. And so after that video, what I'm intending to do is to do very specific use cases applied to particular photographs. So we'll start with a problem definition, and we'll move on to how we solve that problem using the tools that we've got in Affinity Photo. Okay, guys, thanks very much for bearing with me this far. I always enjoy doing these videos, and I do hope you enjoy listening to them as well. If you have enjoyed it, please put a like down below. And again, if you've got comments, don't hesitate to write them. I respond to every single comment that I get. And it's important in the sense that I can take a sounding of how things are going on a particular topic from the comments, from what people are asking. And indeed, if I get stuff wrong, which is always a possibility, don't hesitate to point it out. Okay, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye now.